Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. You have tuned into the Rebel News live stream on this, a Monday, March 23rd, 2026. I'm David Menzies, and my co-host, well, let me tell you a bit about my co-host, shall I? Today is National Tamale Day, and I think that's so fitting because my co-host, yes, indeed, is one hot tamale. She is the she-devil with a sword. She is the Khaleesi of Northern Alberta. She is the sensational Sheila Gunn Reid. How you doing there, Sheila?
David, I'm doing great. It's also National Near Miss Day, and every day is a near miss with you in the HR department, isn't it? You're just starting off the show, starting off the week just like that.
Wait a minute. I looked up because I was wondering, why is a Mexican delicacy equated to an attractive lady? And I looked up the phrase, she's one hot tamale, and it says this is an informal American idiom used to describe a woman as highly attractive, spirited, or spicy. That is you, Sheila Gunn Reid. I rest my case.
Thank you, David. Thank you. I feel like this is one of those things that Americans say, but like is not a Mexican thing, sort of like Cinco de Mayo.
Yeah, that's
where
right.
it's just an American reason to sell beer. It has nothing to do with Hispanic culture whatsoever.
And Sheila, before we go on, and speaking of hot and spicy on this National Tamale Day, as you know, I went to the always fun Toronto Sportsman Show, heaven for anglers and shooters and campers and off-roaders and so on. And I got to hobnob. Oh my God, where are my bullies from high school? If only they could see this. I got the hobnob with the CCFR calendar girls.
That's why I sent you, buddy. That's why I sent you.
But you never responded to my text because both Lady Menzoid and I, we think, look at this, folks. Is Sheila Gunn Reid Miss October?
I am not, but I am not. I think I'm too old to be in the CCFR calendar, but I like that lady's vibe. I for sure do.
And the subsequent photo is her posing beside a Ford GT. I don't think you have that kind of cash, do you, Sheila?
I don't know. I don't like to talk about.
It's like a $250,000 automobile.
I know, but you look, pickup trucks, a nice one, $130,000. So, things just cost more these days than they used to. Anyways, let's tell everybody what we're doing around here. The show's 5 minutes in, way off the rails already. If you are watching us on Rumble, it's a great free speech platform if you want to get involved in the show and support the work that we do, because we'll never take a penny from the government to do the work that we do. We rely on you at home, but we just don't want to take your money. We want to allow you to have your say. So if you want to leave a Rumble rant, that's their paid chat over there. If it's over the $5 US cutoff, we're reading it on air. It's mandatory. If it's under that, we'll do our best to get to it, time permitting. If you are watching us on YouTube, their paid chat is called a super chat. The same rules apply, but there's an additional way to support us. You can leave a super thanks. That's their paid comment. So if you miss a live version of the show, but you still want to say something and you want to support us, just leave a super thanks. So that's it. Let's get into the news of the day.
Absolutely. And Sheila, I'm so sorry. I'm flying blind. Super producer Olivia gave me the sheet of topics. Somehow, as I enter my Joe Biden years, I lost the sheet going from my desk to the studio. I just noticed. I only brought the stuff about the history of the hot tamale. So
such a Menzies move, man. Yes, I would love to take the reins on the show today.
Thank you.
Thank you. I feel safer that way anyway. So for those of you who don't know, another church fire, one of, over 100 church fires and vandalisms over the last few years in this country, sparked by an alleged discovery of 200 and some odd bodies at the Kamloops Indian Residential School. I should note that not a single body has been found, not a bone, not a tooth, not anything. And yet it has sparked a wave of anti-Christian and specifically anti-Catholic hate all across the country. And the Liberals don't seem to care. I mean, they're the ones who stoked this. They don't seem to care. Another church in, oh boy, Mogerville, New Brunswick. New Brunswickers write to me, phonetically spell that for me if you don't mind, where another church has been torched in the 10-year anti-Christian crime wave fomented by the liberals and ignored by the regime media. We've got Ezra on this.
Ezra Levant for Rebel News. I'm outside a Christian church in Majorville, New Brunswick, that was torched yesterday. As you can see, the front door is boarded up. Sunday service is completely scorched. I'll have a full report from my visit here tomorrow. This is just the latest in a 10-year-long anti-Christian crime wave that has been fomented by anti-Christian politicians and ignored by anti-Christian journalists. I'll have my full report tomorrow.
Gee, Sheila, something reminiscent about what's also happened to Canada in general in the last 10 years. I can't quite put my finger on it, but speaking of which, didn't Justin Trudeau and his best buddy, Gerald Butts, say, well, this sort of thing is terrible, it's understandable?
Yeah, that's the exact word he used, understandable. Yeah. I can't imagine going to a place of worship and burning it down and everything that entails. I mean, especially in these smaller communities and in Indigenous communities where this happened, this is the center of the community. It's where everybody is born. Like your birth is registered there as your baptism, and where all the major milestones of your life besides your sacraments are offered to you, your marriage, the funerals of your loved ones. For some communities, it was like this for my own. It's where your graduation ceremony was held. And so all that history, all that sense of community and religious and moral support, that's all gone by outside activists sometimes, and as Ezra says, whipped up by the liberals and fomented in the mainstream media. If this were happening to mosques, could you even imagine? The United Nations would be investigating us, but because it's Christian churches, nobody seems to give a damn.
I don't have to imagine, Sheila, as we saw with the hijab hoax.
Exactly.
The little girl that said an Asian, but we all think she meant Caucasian.
Right, but she's little. She didn't know what the word meant.
Yeah. And what did we see? The prime minister flew in, the premier, the mayor, the entire mainstream media. And when it was all exposed as a gigantic hoax, the narrative, folks, if you can believe it, was not to apologize or retract or issue corrections. It was, yeah, but you know what? It could have happened, so we still have to call out Islamophobia. Right. And you're absolutely right. Gerald Butts or Justin Trudeau or any politician in our Dominion saying about a mosque being vandalized or being set on fire, it's horrible, but it's understandable. Well, there's the end of your political career. And one last point, Sheila, some of those churches of the 100 in the last few years, they were on native reserves. Yep. And the natives didn't want them burnt down for all the reasons you said. It was the community hub. It was a get-together place. And yet, presumably, in that case, because so many of these arsons have gone unsolved, the Antifa types doing the arson, well, I guess they know better than the natives who are actually going to the church itself. So for all those reasons, this is so perverse. And again, this will be one of the most underreported stories and overlooked stories of the year. Whereas if it was a mosque, as you rightly said, there would be the 24/7 mobile news units in the parking lot of the mosque giving hourly updates.
There would be a special commission if 100 mosques were burned or vandalized over. Ezra, I think Ezra's being a little bit overly fair to say that it's been over the last 10 years. I think it's much less than that. But yeah, there would be a national commission into it. And yet this stuff goes underreported and largely ignored. But of course, we have a government that wants to censor our Bibles. Yes. They think that Christian teaching, especially on the theology of the body, they think that that is hateful rhetoric. And so are we going to see that from these liberals? Absolutely never. We will never know the full extent of what's happening here and how it's been happening until the Liberals are out of power.
Yeah,
and I don't see that happening anytime soon.
No, unfortunately. And, well, let's be frank, Sheila, Christianity is not a protected class. Far from it. It is a acceptable target in the left. To be anti-Christian ties into anti-colonialism, anti-imperialism, and on it goes. And, you know, if you think I'm exaggerating, folks, just 2 weeks ago when Ezra, I don't know when this man sleeps, he was on the grounds of a Jewish synagogue that got shot up again. And the police were having a press conference. The damage is unrepaired. The shell casings are still warm. And remember, Sheila, that the Toronto Star reporter said to the chief, "Hey, what about Islamophobia, man?"
Oh my God. That was just, that man should be so embarrassed. What a national embarrassment that one question was. I'm just going to try to keep us on track here. Doug Ford being Doug Ford. He had a couple of good moments last week, but it is Doug Ford, and we know those moments are fleeting, are between. He said that Ontario is under attack by Donald Trump. We're under attack by President Trump on a daily basis. Our businesses are under attack. Our communities and the people are under attack. Okay, Doug, let's watch.
We always focus on environmental issues and we're going to be working with the First Nations community. We take all that into consideration, but we can't just sit back. We have to start moving. You know, we're under attack by President Trump on a daily basis. Our businesses are under attack, our communities, and the people are under attack. So we need to do everything we can to focus on expansion, creating more jobs, 23,000 construction jobs, and tens of thousands of other jobs, no matter if it comes from tourism or people just flying in. We always focus.
Doug Ford,
Sheila,
wartime premier.
Yeah. You know what's amazing? Today, the Ontario legislature resumed sitting for all of 4 days. And then guess what? They're on summer break until September or maybe October. I'm not sure. Here's the thing. I stand to be corrected, but in the scrumming of Ford today by the mainstream media stenographers, nobody asked them, what about today in Sault Ste. Marie? There are 1,000 workers with the Algoma Steel Mill being handed their pink slips. Like, what happened to the unholy alliance with the Carney Liberals? What happened to Elbows Up? What happens to, you know, we're the ones that are going to save Canadian and Ontario jobs and protect Ontario, as that little slogan is. I just find that incredible, Sheila. All they're talking about is talk. I mean, we go back to 2018. Doug Ford started talking about the Ring of Fire, where these precious rare earth minerals are in Northern Ontario. Have we even started construction of the road to the Ring of Fire? It's always this thing coming, like Linus with the Great Pumpkin, that never seems to arrive. So why isn't the media, well, I know the answer, but can't the media be a little more responsible and hold him to the promises that he's made for more than a year and his teaming up with Carney? Because I don't see anything happening. And let's not forget last month, the Diageo plant in Amherstburg, Ontario, after some 50 odd years, also shuttered. So I just see doom and gloom. And, you know, as far as I'm concerned, is it Missouri? It's the show me state. Stop talking and show me some constructive, plans and policies and projects. And by that, I don't mean sinking tens of billions of dollars of taxpayer money into battery plants that are going to be belly up by the time they're built.
You know, it's almost like Doug Ford should quit fighting with the Americans. The Americans cited his attacks on their liquor industry, just petty attacks on the liquor industry there, as one of the reasons they are maintaining the tariffs. Could he just shut up for a second? Maybe if he didn't talk like he's some sort of wartime premier, like this is World War II and he's got his own Pearl Harbor. If he could just stop talking like that and start maybe thinking collaboratively with the Americans, maybe those industries in Ontario would not be under attack. But I just want to put this into context because everybody talks about the steel industry, but those canola tariffs affected more people. But you wouldn't know that if you got all your news from the mainstream media because they don't talk about what's happening in the West. I have jobs numbers I want to talk about later on in the show because there's I was going to swear, but I'll say no shoot Sherlock moment later on in the show with an article, I think it was from the Globe and Mail, and it was like, of course. And the job statistics play it out, but I'll get to that in a sec, like later on in the show. But Doug Ford isn't doing himself any favors. But I think he's pulling the old Mark Carney. I don't have a record to campaign on, so let's just go after Donald Trump.
Indeed, I totally agree. And people say, well, what could Doug Ford do? Well, first of all, don't run those stupid ads, especially ads depicting an idol of Trump, Ronald Reagan, in it, saying, Mr. Reagan would not approve. Don't talk about, with a smile on my face, cutting power to Michigan. With a smile on my face. Sheila, the messaging is so appalling. You would think if that's the threat, you would frame it in, I've got my back against the wall. I've got no other option. How about this as a goodwill gesture? Mr. Trump, California wine and Kentucky bourbon are coming back on the shelves of our LCBO monopoly stores. Let's.
It's a gesture of goodwill.
Yeah. And really, what did that do, Sheila, other than shoot ourselves in the foot? Depending on who you believe, that was, about $100 million worth of product or almost $1 billion worth of product. I guess there's probably a disconnect between retail and wholesale value.
Sure.
But it is sitting in warehouses, which we also have to pay for. And this is all being bought and paid for. And with some products, it gets the best before date, so you're going to have to just pour it down the drain. But then again, Doug Ford is really good at pouring alcohol down the drain when he did that stupid photo op of him pouring Crown Royal down the drain. So, but like you said, it's a goodwill gesture. It's something to build on, but he won't do it.
No, he won't, because I don't know why. He's the... I guess patient zero of elbows up derangement. I think so. Like, I don't get it. There's a reason jobs are not being created in this country, and it has a lot to do with Mark Carney. Almost everything to do with Mark Carney. If you're worried about job losses, look at Mark Carney. If you're worried about youth unemployment, especially teenagers, like 20%, look at Mark Carney and his immigration policies. If we had a slowing economy, but lower immigration, we would be able to weather it a lot better.
100%, Sheila. Part-time jobs, summer jobs, and the National Post had a great feature last June, the death of the summertime job. Mm-hmm. These jobs do not exist in Canada. And to your point, all I have to point to is the dubious nickname for Canada's largest coffee chain, which is Sing Hortons. That tells you all you need to know about the impact of mass migration and the Canadian job market.
I've heard it described as Taj Mahortons. also.
Yeah, but the Taj Mahal is beautiful. And Tim Hortons these days, if you really need to use the washroom, try to hold it in, folks, because I think quality control in that department has just been appalling. You're probably too young to remember, Sheila. Back in the 70s, McDonald's used to have this ad campaign, at McDonald's it's clean, was the slogan. Going into the average Tim Hortons, that is a minefield when it comes to the bathrooms.
We don't like that here in Alberta. We have competitions with our gas stations for Canada's nicest bathroom.
Oh, that's beautiful.
There used to be, I think it was Whitecourt was one, and then Valley View had the other one. So the big north-south highway. There's Westview RV Park in Wetaskiwin. Beaver Hill Shell in Lac La Biche also one. We really take this seriously. We don't like a gross bathroom in Alberta, and I'm just so happy. I'm glad. Thank you. I spent a lot of time on the road.
That's the way to go. And by the way, Sheila, I'm not dumping on those who serve the public and provide a restroom, because as you know, there are so many members of the public that are just absolute
Truckers,
pigs.
yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
that what they do in a public bathroom, they would never dream of doing in their own bathroom. But if you are going to provide that service, that's part of the equation when it comes to, you know, maintaining them.
Yeah. Let's move ahead. Another problem with the court system in this country. Race played a role in Ontario drug dealers' sentencing. This somewhat attenuates his moral responsibility. The impact of institutionalized oppression, racism, and discrimination are significant factors to Caleb's trajectory in the criminal justice system, according to the assessment report. This is mental. I don't know if we have Efron didn't send me the archived version of that. But this is just part of a systemic system where the victims are actually the oppressed in all of this, because everybody gets to go before a judge and cry, poor little criminal, I've been so oppressed. And what's happening before me is not a series of bad life choices that I've made to basically lay waste to my community and my own personal potential. Somebody did this to me, and maybe they didn't even do it to me. They did it to my ancestors that I never met.
You know, Sheila, I'm losing track of the social justice in real justice courtrooms happening. Is this the fellow, because I did a monologue earlier this year, and it was about also a race-based sentence in terms of reducing it. And it was a drug dealer who had multiple children from multiple wives, and some of the wives of whom he allegedly beat. Is this the same case, or is this another one?
I'm looking at it right now. I don't think this is the same one. In that case, they gave him a reduced sentence at one of the reasons they cited for his reduced sentence was he has children to support.
Which he doesn't.
Well, no, that guy had like 10 different kids with a bunch of different baby mamas, as is the case there. And like, he had criminal charges against him for assaulting some of those women. He had never supported most of those kids. And the judge was like, you know what? This is a family man. He's got to get back out there. And it's like, which family? That one, that one, that one, that one, that one, and that one? Like, pick which family he needs to support.
Yeah, he's got to get back to his career criminality. But, you know, Sheila, the bottom line is this. You know, the age-old icon of Lady Justice, you know, she's got the sword in one hand, the scales in the other, and a blindfold. Justice is blind. In Canada, Lady Justice is wearing X-ray glasses already. You know, there is no blindness. We're all looking into these other factors. And I never thought I'd see the day, Sheila, where the courtroom, the actual justice facility becomes a social justice classroom lifted from a university campus.
Right. I think the problem is too, like in the United States, and again, this is me making the case for in the new country, we elect our judges. Because in the United States, the judge's name is like in the third paragraph of the story. Because people want to know their track record, you know, and their political enemies want to know their track record. And so the judge themselves becomes part of the story. Here, you might never know the judge's name that sentenced these guys. You never know that they've had a series of bad sentences given out to career criminals, lifetime recidivists, plagues upon their community. You never really know. And I think there needs to be an effort to shine the light on these guys, because like when you measure something, you change it. And when you start measuring these judges' behavior and their name becomes part of the story, we may never get bail reform and sentencing reform out of the Liberals. In fact, their version of sentencing reform is actually this problem here. When a couple of years ago, they removed the mandatory minimum sentences imposed by Stephen Harper on a whole bunch of gang-related offenses, they removed those mandatory minimums because of systemic racism. And so now we have this ongoing problem. So we may never get that fixed legislatively, but maybe you could change the attitude of some of these judges once their names are in the news.
No, that's a good point. The other point, Sheila, is this. how out of touch they are with the general populace.
Oh, for sure. They don't have to live with their bad decisions.
Exactly.
We do.
Yeah. I mean, do they think for a moment that the vast majority of Canadians, and I'm talking 90 percentile plus, agree with this kind of stuff? You know, letting gangbangers out like the courtroom is a revolving door, taking into consideration the skin color and whether or not the person is Indigenous. No, crime is crime. And if you're dangerous, you need to be behind bars. Simple as that.
Yes. Speaking of dangerous, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, maybe I'm reading something crazy out of the corner of my eye. Is there a change to the dangerous policing that's happening at Bathurst and Shepherd in Toronto?
Well, you're talking about Inspector Bernardo, and I think we have some video from Kareem Assad. And you know what? I guess we have another excuse to go back next Sunday. That, of course, means me.
To see it.
And see if the proof is in the proverbial pudding. So let's see what the Inspector Bernardo has to say. And actually, is it Inspector Bernardo or is he being promoted to a deputy?
I don't know. I don't know anything about the policing structure in Toronto the way that I should. But it sounds like there's a new directive from the Toronto Police: no protests on residential streets in the area of Bathurst and Shepherd. So this is the Jewish community where they're doing these Yahya Sinwar cosplays and marching through the Jewish neighborhoods. If you're protesting the state of Israel, what on earth then does that have to do with the Jews of Toronto, right? But it sounds like they might actually be doing the right thing here and saying, you keffiyeh wearing maniacs, you need to go somewhere else.
Are you going to have flags, signs, face coverings, keffiyeh? That's a protest. If you're walking about your business to get to your car that's parked there, that's a different story. But you know, now we're splitting hairs. That's a game that you want to play, we'll have a conversation. Because I know that's a game you're probably willing to play, some of you that are here. But yes, if all the... Oh, that's fine. The flags are off to put away, but you're not... You know what a protest is. You're not here walking around on a rainy day. You know, you're there to do something. If it's inciting people that live there and they're causing a fear, sure. We're going to have a conversation about it. But we know what
the next press release from PPS is going to be, right? So we just want to be 100% clear, right?
Yeah, no protests on residential streets in the area of Bathurst and Shepherd.
And so I understand walking with a real.
Oh, there you go. So Bathurst and Shepherd.
I understand holding flags is a demonstration. I understand that.
We can have that conversation as it goes. I'm not going to give you the play-by-play.
Holding a flag is a demonstration. I get it.
Okay.
But walking with the keffiyeh on is not a protest, is it correct? With the keffiyeh on is not a protest.
Not necessarily, no. Okay. Depending on the context. If you're leaving a protest and I'll find a tenant with keffiyeh, face mask stuff, you're still part of the protest, you do a lap and you come back. Did you take a break? No. You went, continued your protest. If you're going home, that's a different conversation. Have the officers, officer, I'm done, I'm going home, freedom of movement, throw your boots. But we are going to challenge you.
Yeah, that guy with the ratty white beard who's talking about the etiquette of protests, Sheila. He's the guy that stole Lincoln Jay's cell phone, by the way. We did get it back, and he is known to get handsy. So it's just to me so laughable that he's talking about the right to protest. So I wasn't there, and no one from the team was there yesterday. But maybe, Sheila, it makes sense to go back and see if this is the new law of the land, so to speak, when it comes to reining in the behavior of these people. Look, I believe we're free speech absolutists.
Yeah, me too. I was going to say I struggle with this one.
No, I don't struggle with it, Sheila. When you're chanting genocide, when you're displaying swastikas, I'm sorry. That is already against. Is it Section 319 of the Criminal Code, which is never enforced? But arrest the peaceful counter demonstrators and members of the independent media. So maybe the public en masse has had it with this garbage when it comes to the Hamas holes, and it's time to rein them in. So maybe we'll pay a visit next Sunday, see what's going on.
Well, and I think that's the bone of contention for me, is you have a right to be objectionable in a public place. Absolutely you do. If you are supporting an outlawed terrorist organization, if you are making calls for genocide, that then becomes an unlawful assembly, And then different rules kick in. By the way, you cannot or should not be wearing a mask during an unlawful assembly. So
100%.
they are showing, support for an outlawed terrorist organization and making calls for genocide, which is hate speech. And you're wearing a mask. You're breaking a whole bunch of laws there. Like, tell that guy to take his mask off.
Sheila,
tell him to take his keffiyeh off. That you can't do that in this country.
I've long stood by that, including, I'm sorry, if someone is wearing a burqa, no. In public, you can wear that at home, but in public, I want to see your face. Why? Because if we cross paths and you assault me wearing some kind of face disguise, I am at an inherent disadvantage to identify you. So whether it's for protest reasons or religious reasons, I want that mask gone. And this is really impeding law enforcement by having people masked up. And part of the blame, Sheila, I'm sorry, goes to the COVID days. I mean,
I know.
Remember when we were all supposed to be wearing a mask? It used to be, folks, you'd walk into a bank wearing a mask. The teller would be pressing the silent alarm button. During COVID, you walked into a bank without a mask on and you were being screamed at by the Karens. So there's a holdover of that. These people wearing medical masks when even the chief medical health officers say, no need for that. No, I'm still going to wear it. Oh, why? I thought we were supposed to follow the science. Shut up. Mind your own business. We got to, masking up in public, unless it's Halloween, got to keep Halloween in the mix. It's got to go.
Yeah, there are some people who are wearing, face masks in public, and they might be sick or whatever. Maybe they're cancer patients or whatever. But then there are other people who just very clearly have an NDP lawn sign for their face. And I know exactly how you vote when you look like that. I remember during COVID, the Edmonton City Police released a sketch of a guy who had robbed a Max. I think it was a Max. And they actually brought in a sketch artist to sketch a 5'10" regular build white guy wearing jeans and a hoodie and a baseball cap and a mask. And I'm like, that's everybody right now in like the throes of 2020. Like I was like, why did you waste the police sketch artist time with that? Who am I looking for? Everybody?
I don't know what it's like in Alberta, but I'll tell you, when on the radio or in the newspaper, when you're reading about a suspect at large, here's the typical shtick, Sheila. The suspect is described at 5'9" to 5'10", medium build, about 180 pounds, wearing a blue windbreaker and white jogging shoes.
Okay.
There's something
We're
missing.
missing something.
What are we? Oh, that's right. The skin color.
Yeah, race.
Right? Yeah, that has become...
Just as an objective identifier, it's helpful.
This is insanity, Sheila, right? I mean, how you've just narrowed that descriptor I just gave you. That's probably about 500,000 people in Southern Ontario. Okay,
right.
Unbelievable.
Let's hit an ad break and then we'll come back with the border crime story. Quite something. I think this guy was like recognized with the Governor General Award. I think. Anyways, let's hit an ad break. We'll come back on the other side.
Budget 2026 is focused on what matters, including record investments in education. Budget 2026 is focused on giving students the best opportunities to succeed. That's why we're following through on our commitment to hire 3,000 more teachers and 1,500 more EAs. It also focuses on fast-tracking the construction and renovation of 161 schools across the province. Budget 2026, focused on what matters.
Alberta is at a crossroads. For years, I've heard the frustration. I've felt it too, but frustration doesn't build a country. Preparation does. In my new book, Independence Blueprint, What Alberta Can Learn from Quebec, I break down the hard mechanics of sovereignty, what we can learn from Quebec's 1995 referendum, the research that's already been done, and what would actually come next for a free Alberta. There's the constitutional process, currency, pensions, continuity of services, trade, resource control, Indigenous partnership, and international recognition. These aren't slogans. This isn't fantasy. These are just hard facts and serious preparation. Whether Alberta stays or goes, we need to understand the stakes. Head over to buy your copy today at independenceblueprint.ca. Let's be prepared, because our time is now.
Gun bans make great distractions.
Trudeau may be gone, but Carney has picked up his same
We
rhetoric.
will quickly, and I mean quickly, reinvigorate the buyback of
Hunters, collectors, competitors, and defenders of tradition are still being targeted, while criminals run wild under Liberal policy. But we are fighting back. Join us, Canada's National Firearms Association, in defense of freedom.
Canadians know the national anthem. They stand in silence to remember those who died for this country. But not every Canadian knows their rights and freedoms. The Freedom Passport will change that. It looks and feels like a Canadian passport, but contains the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms in a portable, easy-to-read format. The Freedom Passport. Order one for yourself and for all the freedom lovers that you love at freedompassport.ca.
Okay, regular viewers of the show know that this is normally when we do an ad read, but I'm going to leave it for a little bit because I want to talk about this border officer charged after a truck full of opium. What year is this? Opium, cannabis, and tobacco crosses into Ontario. So CBSA officer is facing several charges after he allegedly allowed a transport truck filled with millions of dollars worth of opium, cannabis, and tobacco to cross the border into the Niagara region. The RCMP confirmed that the officer, who was employed at the Queenston-Lewiston Port of Entry in Niagara-on-the-Lake, was first arrested in January. January? Why are we just finding out about this now? After he did not follow CBSA policies when he permitted a truck filled with contraband to enter into Canada. The driver of the truck was also arrested at the time. On March 6th, the RCMP said the CBSA officer identified as Daniel Notariani and the driver identified as Abhishek, is that a real name? Were charged with conspiracy to import a Schedule I substance, trafficking a controlled substance, importation of a Schedule I substance, possession for the purposes of trafficking. You think it's a truck full of it. Distribution of Schedule I substance, and transportation and possession of tobacco for the purposes of sale. He's scheduled to appear in court, well, today, actually, in Welland. And Abhishek is to appear April 9th, 2026. But like this guy, this CBSA officer, was given the Governor General's Award for exemplary service like 3 months before he did this. David, can you hear me? David's gone down. His earpiece isn't working.
Oh,
so
Sheila, it's back on again. Sorry.
Okay. So that like 3 months before he pulled this, whatever this is, major trafficking operation. So in October 22, 2025, this same CBSA officer was given the Governor General's Peace Officer Exemplary Service Medal. Yeah. It's crazy.
So, if I'm reading this correctly, Sheila, and these are all allegations, nothing's being proven in court, it sounds like an inside job. You know,
completely.
Have your truck go to the friendly border agent, in terms of friendly with the mob, and you're going to sail through. Is that what's going through here? Because it wouldn't be the first time. I understand just the other day there was a prison guard in Ontario charged with bringing contraband into the big house. So I guess, am I reading into this correctly, that it was a wink, wink, nudge, nudge kind of thing, as opposed to an incompetent inspector?
Yeah, it looks that way. So it was determined that he allegedly did not follow CBSA policy, and a transport truck and trailer were allowed into Canada containing contraband. So he's charged with conspiracy to import, which means that he was involved in the plan to bring it into the country. It wasn't like he was just asleep with a switch and said, I'm not checking that truck. Come on in. I'm taking it easy today. He's charged with conspiracy. So he's involved in the plot.
That's the word I focused on, the C word, conspiracy. But and in which case, Sheila, hats off to the authorities who, if these characters are indeed guilty, I think that's incredible police work. Because consider the sheer volume of just trucker traffic that goes over the international borders between Canada and America every day. The idea that you're able to pinpoint this one there's something fishy about it. I think that's incredible detective work, Sheila.
For sure. But it's not just drugs coming across the border illegally, it's people.
Yes.
We've got, well, I guess we'll go to the polling data. So I think this is from Nanos. It's being reported in Blacklock's. I've got the Nanos polling data, and I'm just going through it today. Almost half of Canadians surveyed nationwide say immigration is causing Canada to change in ways I don't like. Sorry, this isn't the Nanos data. This is in-house polling from the government. I've got the Nanos data that shows that at least 6 in 10 Canadians are like, there are way too many people coming into this country. And that's across all voter demographics. But this is in-house data from the federal government that say almost half of Canadians say Canada is changing in ways they don't like. And that's from the Immigration Department. 2/3 complained immigrants must do more to integrate. The research followed Immigration Minister Lena Diab's most recent cuts to quotas on a promise of taking back control over our immigration system. Well, shouldn't we be in control of it? Like, when did we lose control, Lena? Who lost control of it? Is it you people? Yes.
Oh, Sheila, I don't know about you. As long as I have a memorandum of understanding from Mark Carney, what's the question? But you know what? Given those sheer numbers, that means, Sheila, that there are liberals, right? Or people at least that voted liberal that say, I don't like this. But wait a minute. Didn't this liberal government, at least under Trudeau, say, if you're questioning the immigration numbers, you are a racist? So I guess is their own base racist now too?
What I still don't understand is that especially people in the GTA and places like the Lower Mainland and Montreal to a certain extent, you sit there and you look around your country and you're like, it's changing in ways that I don't like.
Yep.
Because there are too many immigrants coming in too fast. And then you say, 2/3 of them are saying that these immigrants that somebody else led into the country are not integrating properly and it's causing social strife. How can you, I just don't understand the disconnect in someone's brain who looks back at Canada in 2012, 2013, 2014 with orderly, rules-based immigration coming in to meet employment targets, fill gaps, whatever, to where we are now with just a flood of unskilled immigration. And you don't pin it on the people responsible when you're voting. I don't understand that.
I don't get it either. And I want to be clear about something too, Sheila, in case people are saying, oh, listen to these two white privileged folks complaining about, the black and brown people. No. One of my best sources, I can't give his real name, we call him Ted Smith, an Indian who moved here legally in the 90s. This is not the country he signed up for. I bumped into a man at Princess Auto last week in Scarborough who recognized me, big fan of the show. He came here also in the 90s from Sri Lanka. And what was the first thing out of his mouth? With the immigration that's happening right now, I don't recognize this country. Sheila, these are not white people and not even white people born here. These were immigrants that got in legally and properly and had a skill set, and they see what the Liberals have done with mass migration, and they are calling it out.
Yeah, I mean, one of the regions of this country that is really fighting the Chinese foreign interference and the anchor baby problem in certain hospitals in this country is the Chinese expat Chinese nationals or former Chinese nationals who went through the steps to become Canadian citizens the right way in Richmond, BC. They are the ones always raising the issue of birthright citizenship because there's hospitals are just full of Chinese oligarchs, spoiled brat children having their anchor baby here so that the whole family can be sponsored to be Canadian by the one baby. They're the ones always raising this issue. Because they're saying all this transnational repression, it's happening to us. Like it's happening to them. It's not happening to me. It's happening to them.
So Sheila, the question is, why is this happening? And I did a monologue when I was guest hosting for Ezra 2 weeks ago. And here's my theory. As we know, the biggest demographic for the Liberals are the boomers. That's people born between 1946 and 1965. Don't blame all the boomers. I'm a boomer. I sure didn't vote Liberal. But what the point I'm getting at, Sheila, is that the Liberals, they might be evil, but they're not stupid. They realize this demographic is dying off. The earliest boomers are now entering their 80s. They need a new base. And I'll tell you, and you know this, Sheila, the younger people, they're swinging conservative. You know, they see this Liberal Party.
They're not swinging conservative. They're fully conservative.
100%. But as always, the problem is getting them out en masse to vote on election day. But that's an issue for another time. So my personal theory is replace the dying off boomer base with a migrant base with a silent quid pro quo agreement that, hey, every 4 years, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, just check Team Red when it's election day. I really believe that.
Yeah, I saw some statistics that showed that if boomers were not allowed to vote in the last election, that it would have been a conservative majority. Like if you took the boomers out and or if you just let the young people, like the under 30s, vote, it also would have been a conservative majority. Well, those people are overwhelmingly conservative, the youngsters are. And it's worse out here. They're even more conservative. They're more conservative than the boomers out here.
You're making my case, Sheila, you know. And even a place like Windsor, 3 federal seats, always red and orange. And the last election, 2 of those seats went blue. It was incredible. And when I went to the Windsor rally by Polyev, that was standing room only, sold right out. They were turning people away by the hundreds, not because Polyev's mean, but because if they let them in, you know, the mainstream media runs with the fire code was broken at the rally. These were young people, so many people in the trades, and normally the NDP is their traditional base, but maybe they'll swing Liberal. They've gone full conservative.
Yeah, we're watching what's happening to the trades in the East and Central Canada turn into the trades in the West. Because our trade unions are blue-collar conservative voters or pipelining, whatever. Yep. And we're seeing that happen out East with much joy to see the NDP lose the union vote. It's great. You can have the teachers' unions, I guess.
And this speaks to the NDP's collapse, by the way, Sheila. Once upon a time, I'm going back to the Ed Broadbent days. They were about the bucket brigade, the hard hat helmet people on construction sites. They were fighting for good, high-paying union jobs. And now this NDP, this iteration, it's about climate change. It's about shutting down pipelines, you know, basically projects that their base would be gainfully employed in. So is there little wonder why the NDP might be completely wiped out in the next election?
They're insignificant. They propped up the Liberals. And so a lot of their own vote base said, well, if you're just going to vote for the Liberals, then you're going to prop up the Liberals, I may as well vote Liberal. What's the difference, right? They just turn themselves into the socialist arm of the Liberal Party of Canada. And a lot of their voters made it official after going steady with them for a little bit. I'm going to do this ad read, and then I know Olivia wants us to talk about what I referred to as the Global News No Shoot Sherlock article of the year. You know, like, thanks, Tips. We've been saying this for 15 years. Anyway, we've got to pay the bills, so we've got a message from our friends at the Wellness Company. We all like to think COVID is behind us, but what if the effects are still lingering in the body, especially in the brain. A new study from NYU Langone Health found something alarming. People suffering from long COVID showed changes in part of the brain responsible for protecting and cleaning brain tissue. Researchers are linking this to chronic inflammation and early warning signs of Alzheimer's disease. This may help explain why more than 20 million Americans are still dealing with long COVID symptoms like fatigue, shortness of breath, and that frustrating brain fog. Scientists believe ongoing inflammation and spike protein exposure may be disrupting the brain's natural cleanup system. The wellness company's Ultimate Spike Detox is your solution. Created with guidance from Dr. Peter McCullough, this formula was designed to support the body's natural detox process and inflammatory balance. It contains 4 times the nattokinase found in most spike products, along with bromelain, turmeric, and selenium to support circulation and cellular cleanup. If lingering inflammation and spike protein exposure are part of the problem, supporting your body's detox systems may be one of the smartest things you can do. So give your brain a break. Get your bottle of Ultimate Spike Detox today. Head to twc.health/rebel and use code REBEL to get 10% off. Again, that's twc.health/rebel and use code REBEL to get 10% off. I think we had to dance around what we think long COVID is caused by in that ad to keep ourselves on YouTube, but that's okay. Whatever keeps us monetized and everybody employed. Okay, I want to talk about this thing out of Global News where it says it's written by Ariel Rabinovich, but it could be written by Captain Obvious. It says, boosting oil production could ramp up Canada's GDP and jobs, study suggests.
Oh, wait, Sheila, before you go on, this just in, breaking news. Scientists confirm there is salt water in the Pacific Ocean.
Get someone to confirm that the water's wet, too, while you're at it. My Lord. Canada may have the ability to substantially raise its GDP and add thousands of new jobs by building more oil pipeline infrastructure, a new study suggests. Really? According to the report from ATB Financial, Canada could release its total oil production by 1.5 million barrels a day, an increase of 1/3, and generate an average $31.4 billion to Canada's GDP every year for the next decade. Doing this could increase Canada's GDP by 1.1% every single year. In 2025, GDP averaged 1.7% overall, and after the previous 2 years, each grew by about 2%. On what planet is this suddenly new news to anybody who's been paying attention? In here in the West, we're like, please let us help you. Please let us build pipelines. We just want to work and do what we do best, and everybody will benefit. And they won't let us do it, so now we want to leave so that we are not hamstrung by the feds. And they're like, you know what? You know what we could do? We could let Alberta build a pipeline. Or not even, this doesn't even suggest that they could let us build it. They're like, you know, there might be something to something they've been saying all these years.
But
yeah, we know.
But you know what, Sheila? I see this story as a combination of good news, great news. The good news, as obvious as it is, at least a mainstream media outlet is reporting it. And the great news is that nowhere in the lead is, but on the other hand, emissions and climate change and global warming, blah, 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 all the reasons not to build pipelines. That seems to be absent from the story. Am I correct?
Completely absent. Which
Fantastic.
Is an interesting development, because usually they'll trot out some idiot from the Sierra Club or the Pembina Institute to tell you why creating jobs and wealth for the national economy is somehow bad for nature in one of the greenest, cleanest places on the face of the earth, which is Alberta. I don't know how you could live in downtown Vancouver or downtown Toronto and look upon the West with a scornful eye with regard to environmental regulation. Like, this is a beautiful, clean, tidy place. And we want to keep it that way while creating jobs with a low environmental footprint when it comes to ground disturbance. You know, people think of oil sands as these big open pit mines. Most of it is produced by SAGD, just a conventional drilling platform footprint, but they don't know that. They don't care.
Yeah, or they're ignorant And in which case, you know what I would say, Sheila? Get a book. I'm going to give a plug to the boss called Ethical Oil. And that will tell you the real story about the Canadian oil sands, or as the enemies call it, the tar sands. You know.
That's how I know how they voted. Again, that's just an NDP lawn sign from your mouth. I know how you voted when you say tar sands.
Yeah.
But I just want to put a button on this, because this, of course, it plays out in the jobs number. So I think 2 weeks ago, 1 week ago, super bad jobs numbers out of the StatsCan. Canada dropped 84,000 jobs. And but on the flip side, that number would have been doubly as bad, because Alberta alone created 85,000 jobs in that exact same amount of time. So that just shows you the impact of getting out of the way of Alberta, how it would have on the national economy. It's interesting to see mainstream media journalists suddenly realize, oh man, all those six-figure jobs that Alberta wants to create might be good for the economy, especially if they're producing oil, especially when we've got the Strait of Hormuz blockaded and it's driving up the cost per barrel. Yes, that's good for our budget here in Alberta, but it's not good for the consumer. You have to sort of find an equilibrium. We would like to help with that, but they won't let us drill for oil and get it to market.
And Sheila, one other thing about that figure you quoted, the 84,000 job loss number, what makes this even more alarming is that those were private sector jobs. Okay.
Yep.
Not government jobs.
They don't lose their jobs.
Yeah, they don't lose their jobs. They don't
fine.
manufacture anything. But that's what was chilling about that figure.
Right. Those are private sector jobs that have just been disappeared from the economy, but not a single federal government worker has really lost their job, except maybe through retirement or attrition. And so you have a smaller pool of people supporting the public sector jobs, and that is going to be unsustainable in the short term, let alone the long term.
And you know, maybe in the summertime I'll wander around Toronto and I'll do, I guess it's almost like the Flintization of Toronto, Sheila. You see businesses that were around almost forever. I just heard Steve's Music on Queen Street after almost half a century going out of business. I noticed last week when I was in the downtown core, Toronto Barber Supply, 87 years in business, Sheila. 87 years. That's like half the age of Canada, basically, going out of business. The Atrium on Bay used to have a great food court. They're all belly up. And I'm not talking about, independent mom and pop shops, Sheila, but, the likes of Tim Hortons and Popeyes and McDonald's. And if they can't make it in a food court, who can? The carnage is unbelievable. And I think in many respects, there are people that don't even have the money to spend on fast food these days.
Right. And Doug Ford thinks the problem is Donald Trump and not, out of control immigration driving up the cost of everything while simultaneously driving the wages down. One last thing before we wrap the show.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about our old friend, Jessica Simpson. Not the blonde bombshell of the early 2000s, but formerly known as Jonathan Yaniv.
To quote a Stompin' Tom Connors line, Sheila, my back still hurts when I hear that word. He was talking about picking tobacco.
He caned you. He caned you like a bad Middle Eastern wife.
5 times head and shoulders with a steel cane back in September 2019. And of course, because he, she, it is a transgender, no charges. How long is this guy going to game the system? Why is he? And you know what, Sheila? Here's the question. The fact that we have, and I think super producer Olivia has uncovered the footage, in case you think I'm exaggerating, folks. But this was me scrumming Jonathan Yaniv in Vancouver, September 2019. and or August 2019. I'm not sure, but I know it was 2019. And watch what happens to me. You will also see Jonathan swearing and threatening me, and ultimately physically assaulting me.
Not so
merely
handicapped,
for
is he?
practicing journalism. But don't take my word for it. Check out the video evidence. Oh, hey, Jonathan Yaniv.
Sorry?
Jonathan Yaniv, right?
How are you?
I'm David Menzies from the Rebel. I noticed.
Can you just leave me alone, please?
Yeah, are you faking being disabled as much as you're faking being a woman?
Can you leave me alone?
Were you sexually molested as a child?
Leave me alone.
Oh, all of a sudden you're breaking into a trot. I thought you needed a mobility scooter. Jonathan, why do you go after immigrants?
Go away, now, or you will be smacked. Go away, now.
Oh, is that right?
Go away.
You're gonna assault me?
Go away.
Huh?
Go away.
Why do you go after
Go
immigrant
away.
women? Is it because you're a bully? They don't know how to game the system like
Go
you?
away. Go away. Go. Go. You're on private property now.
This is a
my
common
property
area.
too. Go away.
This is your property too?
Go away.
So tell me,
Leave.
why is it that you're going after immigrant women?
Leave me in. Let me in.
Get out! I think we have to fast forward it.
That's okay. We know that you got beaten across the head with that cane, and yeah, he seemed pretty fit, and just juiced up with testosterone rage, by the way.
Yeah.
But also, yeah.
Here's the money shot, Sheila.
Away.
Don't
Get
you?
away.
You better
Get
not.
away.
You better
Get
not.
away. No.
You make
You get
contact.
away.
You're gonna go to jail.
You are going to
Huh?
jail. Go away.
I know. Hey,
You're
don't
going
touch
to-
me.
You're going to jail.
Jonathan, why do you take? Why do you?
Deranged Mama Yaniv too was
yeah.
there. She almost choked me out at the courthouse had it not been for security.
Those are my camera glasses being knocked off, which miraculously were at an angle that could film the rest of the carnage. That was a cosmic fluke. Yeah, but Jonathan Yaniv's mom used her iPad. To jab my Adam's apple. And folks, even with video evidence, the RCMP would not press charges. And the reason is, if we press charges against them, we have to press charges against
For
you.
what?
I said that. For what? Harassment. It's practicing journalism. The guy sheepishly said, well, yeah, I know, but that's the way it works.
It's a story at the time, and it continues to be a story of international interest. Jonathan Yaniv, yes, I am using his birth name.
Yep.
He would try to hire immigrant estheticians,
Correct,
who are working out of their homes to wax his testicles. So he would contact them pretending to be a woman, which he continues to do, and then try to schedule an appointment, and then you would get that turning up at your door and not the woman that you were expecting. And these women, many of them, almost all of them, were immigrant women who, for religious reasons, did not work on men. And so he dragged those women through the fake tribunal system. Thankfully, the Justice Center for Constitutional Freedom stepped in to help them. But he continues to be a menace, a vexatious litigant. Not only did he assault David Menzies, his mom tried to attack me at the courthouse. He physically assaulted Kian Bexty, brandished a taser in a live stream. That's a prohibited weapon. You know, if I were brandishing something on TV right now, I would lose all my guns. I would go to jail. No, nothing. This person
didn't he go after Drea too, Sheila?
I think complaints against Drea, and now after seeing what happened to Chilliwack School Board trustee Barry Neufeld, who simply stated exactly what I'm going to state right now: dudes can't be women. I don't care how much cosmetic surgery you get. Barry Neufeld, was it $250,000?
Yeah. No, 750, wasn't it?
$750,000. $750,000 for hurt feelings from the BC Human Rights Tribunal. Well, guess what? Dollar signs in his eyes. Jonathan Yaniv sees this and hits everybody under the sun in BC with human rights complaints. Western Standard got one. Chris Elston, so Billboard Chris, I don't know how many he's got from Jonathan Yaniv. Dallas Brody got one. And Dallas Brody got one for supporting Chris Elston because Chris Elston got one.
And Sheila, if I may, about the BC Human Rights Tribunal, they are the worst of the worst in Canada.
Mental cases.
And I'm telling you, folks, the only reason Jonathan Yaniv did not win his original complaints of 10 grand each times 12, I think it was, so $120,000 payday, the only reason was the international publicity, the international PR black eye the tribunal received. I truly believe that, Sheila. If this was under the weather, Yaniv is getting a 6-figure check. That's how wackadoodle the BC Human Rights Tribunal is.
Yeah. Yeah. So Dallas Brody, leader of 1BC, she expressed her support for Billboard Chris Elston. Those of you who don't know, I don't know how you couldn't. Chris Elston is like an absolute warrior to protect bodily integrity of minors from being medicalized as a treatment for gender dysphoria. So she makes a post standing up for Chris, who's just constantly getting these complaints from Jonathan Yaniv, better known as Jessica Yaniv, and now Jessica Simpson for some reason. My heart goes out to the real Jessica Simpson. But Dallas Brody makes a post supporting Chris Elston, and she says, "We've got your back, Chris." And then Dallas gets one, and the Western Standard gets one, and like I think there were half a dozen that were just put out, because this is what happens. You feed these stray cats with money when they have their feelings hurt, and then more little stray cats come. And here we've got Jonathan Yaniv.
But Sheila,
he's going to have his big payday now.
Let me ask
and
you
he
this.
Just might get it.
To me, this is the key question. You know, grifters, mentally ill people, and I believe Yaniv is half and half of those two descriptors. 'Twas ever thus. Who do you have more contempt for? The mentally ill grifter or those in power aiding and abetting them? That's the question.
The ones in power.
Yep.
For sure. But I think these people might have overplayed their hand.
Mm-hmm.
After seeing what happened to Barry Neufeld and the international outrage that came with it, $750,000 because you stated biological reality, things that were in medical textbooks like 90 seconds ago, that's a problem. Well, that judgment and then the abuse of the system by Jonathan Yaniv might be enough to bring this whole thing down. So, you know, God uses even the bad for the good. And I think we might see that, where we will see a dismantling of the system, because people who aren't paying attention are going to pay attention when they see stuff like this. And I hope it tears the whole thing apart.
You know, I so hope you're right. And I think you might be right about that, Sheila. And I'll tell you, anyone yelling at the screen right now, "Oh, hey, Menzies, you think you're a psychiatrist? How can you diagnose them as mentally ill?" You know, Sheila, I think in Jonathan Yaniv's own words, he let me rest the case, which is this. A few years ago, he did a selfie stick, and it was him in a photo that he put on X, and it was him standing in front of a swimming pool. And I'm paraphrasing, but what he said essentially was, "Oh, hot day. I'd love to go in for a dip, but I can't. It's that time of the month for me." If that isn't, chapter and verse, an indictment of how insane this man is. He's a biological man. He can't ever have that time of the month. Well, then I don't know what is, Sheila.
Over the course of the last few years of this person being in the national spotlight and then continuing to thrust themselves into the national spotlight like a herpes flare-up, I have learned far too much about this person's genitals. You know, and I've had it. I just want to go back to the before times where I knew nothing of this. It's just awful.
Well, that's that's why I'm coming up with a new line of MAGA hats, Sheila, except my MAGA stands for Make Asylums Great Again.
You know, yeah, the cruelest thing we ever did was closing those things, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah. We've got to a couple of chats. We got, I think, one, two, and then we've got a cringe because I want to know where you were over the weekend, David Menzies. You missed something important.
Oh no!
On the street, and I would have let you wear a costume. I would have let you wear the trans cat. No, if I had known, I would have been like, you know what? Dust off trans cat and get yourself out there, big boy.
Oh,
because there was a
why didn't you tell me? I'm one text away.
I didn't see it till this morning. And
okay.
We missed a real opportunity.
All right.
Yeah, I would have deployed you for sure. I know how you love a good costume story. You got one coming out today. But this is where we could reach back into the tickle trunk for a fan favorite trans cat. Okay, we've got Independent Alberta gifting a subscription to Rebel News. Well, thank you so much.
Oh, okay.
Then we've got a Cruz Milano, because it's $5. Thank you. Venezuelan and newly Canadian. We'll always embrace Canadian Christian values. All these new liberal bills are what the dictator of Venezuela did. It's scary to see Canada going steady into it.
You know, Sheila, he nailed it. I am now apologizing to people coming from regimes like Venezuela,
Eastern
Iran,
Europe.
and on, and saying, hey, I know you came all the way here to get what you thought was going to be a democratic, free world democracy, and with the censorious thugs in Ottawa, it's now Canada's becoming Venezuela. Let's put it that way.
When we go to protests, whatever the protests might be, and you meet somebody from Eastern Europe, they're always like, this is what it was like during the Soviet Union, when you were worried that if you went to protest, that your bank account would be frozen, or you would be found to be in contravention of some trumped up charge like mischief and intimidation, like Tamara Leach. They're like, this is how we used to live, where the government told us what we couldn't say or what we could say and what news we would consume. And if we didn't comply, we would be at financial risk or worse. Like they're always telling us those things.
Sheila, I can tell you, after covering all the COVID protests during those years, by far the most profound people I would get on camera were those from the former Soviet Union and the Eastern Bloc states, Hungary, Romania, Poland, you name it. And what they said, see, they've seen this movie before, and they know how it ends, and it's not a happy ending. And with the COVID lockdowns in particular, this is from the communist playbook. We have a crisis, or we invent a crisis. That's more appropriate, I should think. And, you know, just temporarily, folks, we're going to take away some of your rights. It's for public safety, you see. And those rights never come back. And then you have full-on dictatorship. Those were the people that called out that garbage more than any other demographic.
Yep. All right. I think that's all. Yeah, that's all the chats, David.
Okay.
I'm very sad to say that over the weekend in Toronto, there was a furry convention of sorts.
Damn.
I know. I know. David has a character known as Trans Cat. And for those of you who don't know, I'll tell you I know we're way past time, but I must tell you the Coles Notes version of Trans Cat. David checked himself in to not a mental hospital, Toronto Cat Show, as a cat, to prove a point about self-identification. And the story was so outlandish that an editorial decision was made that we must sit on this.
Yeah. No, you killed it outright.
I didn't kill it. That was before I was in charge.
Hannah killed it.
Yes. Okay. But I knew that the time would be right for, like you can see, David is a much younger man. And there. Wait for it there. Okay. So I did not kill this story. This was before you had me making these decisions. But I did sit on this story. I never said no to the story. I just knew that the time had to be a little bit right for it. And I just remember the horror of you in that leotard. And the fear that your cat mask instilled in me because you had cut away the mouth or something like this. And then, of course, the tan line's just really stepping up a notch. Yeah. Anyway, so David entered the cat show. Now, oh my God, your butt cheeks are hanging out the bottom and just like, I couldn't publish this for your sake. I was like second and third hand humiliated for you. And then I thought, like, your poor wife, you're out there parading around in a leotard with your butt cheeks hanging out the bottom. Oh my God, enough. And you don't knock, you're scratching. Like, it's anyway. But David loves a good story. And you would have been cold enough that you would have worn maybe some leggings and spared us all that. But I would have let you dust off Transcat for this
beautiful
furry convention called the Tour de Fur in Toronto.
How did we miss this?
I don't know. Let's show the video.
Okay.
You would have been right in there like a dirty shirt. Like, this is a fetish, right?
Oh, for sure.
Okay. See, that would have been you up in a tree. Next year, David, next year. Just remind, you know what? I'm going to mark it on the calendar. So I'll put it in my phone so we don't forget.
Yes, and I will attend. And Sheila, you know what? You're right. With these people, certainly not me. It is a fetish.
It's a fetish, right?
This is the disturbing part, and you can't see it, thank God. These are people, I am sure, in a state of semi-arousal as they're parading around in their costumes.
Oh, God. I'm just
yeah, I know.
As you know, I'm prudish when it comes to this sort of stuff. But
no, I'll show up in my cat persona next year, and I'll interview the real furries.
Yeah, I'm curious.
Do you think they might turn on me?
Oh, yeah. They're going to pack up on you.
It's like that scene in The Thing, the brilliant 1982 John Carpenter version. Remember when they bring the dog to where all the other dogs are in the kennel? And all the real dogs, the dog they bring in is actually the vicious alien in pretending to be a dog. And they start growling at first, and then they start baring their fangs. And then they start screaming for their lives because this thing is now turning into some kind of monster and killing the dogs. That's what I'm worried about. They'll realize I'm not a real furry. Much like the dogs.
I think it'll be more like that early video on the YouTube where that guy dressed as a gazelle and then walked through through the lion enclosure, and then the lions attacked him. Or was it a gazelle? Maybe it was a zebra. And he's just like two guys dressed as a zebra walking through an animal enclosure, and the lions attacked him. That's what I'm worried it's going to be like, where they're just going to...
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Come at you. Yeah, I'm worried.
Anyways, it's worth doing. Maybe we get security for that assignment, just in case.
Yeah. I think so. Okay, I think that's it. Let's wrap the show. We're way past time, and I've got a video to do still.
Yes, and I've got a mono to shoot, and I've got a caper in Whitby, Ontario, where I think there is still a mental hospital. So see how everything is a complete circle, Sheila. Anyways, Sheila, thanks for co-hosting. You sound way better than you did last week. So
yes.
I think you're getting better. I noticed that. And thank you to everybody who tuned in. A special thank you to those who were generous enough to give a donation. We really appreciate that. Sheila will be back tomorrow with the lovely Lise Merle. I normally do Fridays, but I'm going to be on assignment out of the GTA. So until next Monday, stay safe and stay sane.